we have a treat this morning. We have with us again this year Karenne Levy, the CEO of MacDonald Training Center. And for those of you who have supported the training center in the past, thank you. And for those of you who have not heard Karenne, you're going to be in for a treat. MacDonald Training Center was started in the 1950s, and you might recall or have read some history about the fact that we as a society did not treat our developmentally disabled citizens very well in those years. Most families hid their family member in the house. They didn't get any education for the child, and as the child grew, there was no training, so there was really no future for them. In the years that have intervened, people like Mr. MacDonald looked at the needs of developmentally disabled people in a very different light, and it was he who created the MacDonald Training Center here. It began as a very small program, and over the years, since the early 50s, it has grown. Karenne joined us 6 years ago as our CEO, and as a member of their board, I can tell you that she has taken the MacDonald Training Center to an entirely new level. In the last 10 years or so, we have begun to understand that there are autistic members of the developmental disabled community that have varied talents, and she has done a wonderful job of incorporating programs for them into the MacDonald Training Center program. I ask you to welcome Karenne Levy, CEO of MacDonald Training Center.
Good morning. Thank you, Fran. Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank Phyllis Guthman for being with me today to support and to make sure that we are here to answer any questions or thoughts that you may have about MacDonald Training Center. So I'm going to take us back. As Fran said, this is our 70th anniversary, and so it is a very meaningful time for MacDonald Training Center. So in 1953, J. Clifford MacDonald had a son who had an intellectual disability. And back in the 1950s, he and his wife were told, if you have a child with an intellectual disability, you have two options. The first is to leave your child at home, or keep your child at home, or put your child away in an institution. And both of those options exclude people from disabilities from being in our community, for being a part of who we are in our schools, in our workforce, in our playgrounds. And so J. Clifford MacDonald said no. But he didn't just say no for his child. He said no for everyone's child. He pushed back on the status quo, and he and a group of very visionary parents started the very first preschool for children with disabilities in the nation. J. Clifford MacDonald was a visionary. He was transformational in his thinking, and he understood that not only did he need to make the change for people with disabilities in Tampa or in Florida, but across the nation. And so he became the chair of several national organizations so that he could have that impact on a national level. And so in 1963, J. Clifford MacDonald was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by JFK. Unfortunately, both men passed away before the actual award, but his widow received the award from President Johnson. I can tell you that I have never seen a Presidential Medal of Freedom, and so for all of us, 7 decades later, when we walk into our lobby, it reminds us that even though we have come so far in including people with disabilities, we have a very long way to go. And if J. Clifford MacDonald and those visionary parents could do that in 1953, just imagine what we can do in 2023. And so we as a community walk hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, to ensure that people with all disabilities have equitable opportunities and that they are included in every part of our communities. This is who MacDonald Training Center is, and this is why we feel that our message is so important, because it is so important that we make sure that people with disabilities are not segregated and put back into institutions, because they do belong. They do belong in every part of our community. So let me tell you a little bit about what's going on at MacDonald Training Center now. So first of all, we remain a beacon of hope, which is very important, because when you are a parent and you have a child and you have all of the hopes and dreams and goals that you have for your baby, and someone tells you that your child will never be able to reach their hopes, goals, or dreams, that's not true. That is MacDonald Training Center. We are a beacon of hope for people who feel hopeless, for people who are not necessarily being told exactly what all the options are for their children to be a part of our community. So we currently have several programs that are reaching out into the community. And so many of those programs are for youth ages 14 to 21, which has not been a group of people that we have served in the past. But we know that the earlier that we can have an impact on a child's life is the more profound the change will be. And so for the last 3 years, we have been able to provide these services for these very young students who in many instances have never had the opportunity to go to a camp because they didn't belong. They were not accepted. And so this has been a remarkable opportunity for the youth, but also very much for their parents and their family members. As Fran mentioned, we also recognize that in 2023, 1 in 44 births will be a child diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And so the need for providing services for this group of young people is very high. We have to be able to adapt to what their needs are. And so MacDonald Training Center, working with our parents and listening to the voice of the community, 3 or 4 years ago began a program that provides industry-recognized certificates for people with disabilities in manufacturing, technology, healthcare, and hospitality. And what these certificates do is that they provide an opportunity for people who have disabilities to have an elevated industry certification. These are not certificates from MacDonald Training Center. These are nationally recognized certificates that give folks that hand up. The goal being that when they go to the workplace and they are looking for a job, they can demonstrate their capabilities and their competence, and they can be very proud of what they have been able to accomplish. Now, I'll tell you a little interesting point about this. When we started this program 5 years ago, no one believed that students could actually have opportunities to receive these elevated certificates. No one believed that it was possible. But it was possible. And so we've had hundreds of students who have gone through this program, many of them who are now working in our community, and many of their parents who, when they come to the graduation and they can see what it is that their child has accomplished, there's the hope. There's the hope. Because they were told that their child could never work and could never be included in the community. So I'm going to tell you a story about one of our young men. So Brian is a young man on the autism spectrum, and Brian's parents knew that if given the opportunity, he would be successful. His father works in a hospital, and so Brian's dream was to work in a hospital. And so they couldn't find any hospitals. They were looking in the Jacksonville area. No one was able to help Brian. So his grandma looked around, and she found MacDonald Training Center. And she called, and they said, no, we don't have any classes yet. He'll have to wait. And we said, no, we have classes. We're going to have one class for Brian, because it is important that Brian's goals, dreams, and hopes are heard. We don't need to wait for other students. We are going to give this opportunity to Brian. So Brian went through what we call our Moffitt MTC program, which is a partnership with Moffitt Cancer Center that gives folks the opportunity to learn how to sanitize a hospital room. And so for any of you who have ever had to spend a lot of time in the hospital room, me being one, I'm sure there are many others, you know that there are probably 2 or 3 people that you see regularly. You see the doctor, you see the nurse, you see the person who's keeping your room clean, and you may see your food service person. And so it was really critical for these folks to understand how to communicate with a patient, how to know when to have a conversation and when not to have a conversation. So it went beyond keeping the room clean. It went beyond just making sure it was sanitized. It was about being a part of that patient's experience while they were in the hospital and ensuring that the patient felt cared for and safe. And so I can tell you that Brian at Moffitt Cancer Center several months has received the Employee of the Month, and he is loved and adored not only by the staff members, but any patient who has the opportunity to engage with Brian, because his smile is contagious and he is so kind and he is so compassionate. And so Brian's dream came true. His family's dream came true. He now has his own apartment and he lives independently. And so this is what MacDonald Training Center does. It gives hope, but it gives the opportunities. It puts that hope into action. It gives people the opportunity to work, live, and play as engaging members of our community. And so for that, we are grateful for the years that you all here have supported MacDonald Training Center. You are very compassionate, kind, and when I was told I was going to have the opportunity to be with you again this Sunday, it gave me so much joy, because I love being with you, because I know where your hearts are, and it is just such an amazing experience to be with people who understand how important it is to include others in our community. So I just really want to thank you for always being supportive of MacDonald Training Center. Thank Fran for always being supportive of MacDonald Training Center, but also of me. I am very grateful. Thank you, Fran. And I hope that if you haven't been to MacDonald Training Center, you will come and see what it is that we do. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you about one of our newest programs, which is a partnership with Zoo Tampa. So we now have a model that has been internationally recognized. It is called the Project Search model. We are one of 4 organizations in the state of Florida that were given the opportunity to provide this service for adults. And so what it is that there are a cohort of students, now we have 11 that started in January, who go to the zoo every day, and they have the hands-on experience of working around the zoo, being a part of that community, and they just love it. Can you imagine having a job going to the zoo every single day? It is such a beautiful thing. So the very first cohort graduated a couple of months ago, and 4 people were hired at the zoo. And so we are hoping that with this cohort, all 11 people will be hired by the zoo. But it is a wonderful program because it is, again, inclusive. It's not leaving people in a building, it's not separating, it's bringing them in. And so every guest and child who gets to go to the zoo also gets to have that interaction with people with disabilities. Because we know that for change to occur and for change to sustain, it is all about engagement and exposure. And if people are kept away and folks never understand their hearts and their souls, their goals and their dreams, then they will never be included. And so this is who we are, and we want to make sure that people in our community understand, please include people with disabilities. We also have partnerships, as you can see, Moffitt Cancer Center, Feeding Tampa Bay, and the Learning Academy at USF. So again, our goal is to be out. It is to be with the community. It is to increase that inclusion. So that is what we are here today about. And I think we're probably on our last slide. Yes. This is so powerful, I can't leave without reading it. Diversity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice. And belonging is having that voice heard. And so many times we leave the belonging piece and we include, but we don't welcome and people don't feel a part of. And that is what we are all about, making sure that people belong. So again, I just want to close by thanking you all for your decades of support to MacDonald Training Center. Your belief in our mission changes lives. It gives hope to parents, and your impact is forever lasting. So thank you.
And she sustains that attitude week after week and year after year. She has done so much for the center. We're very grateful to have her. Thank you, Karen.